Thank you for joining this week's edition of Level Up with Laiken. If you are looking to level up your practice and you want the tangible strategies and the mindset to do it, please hit subscribe. I interview a new lawyer every week who will discuss the strategies they used to successfully scale up their own practice. This week, we have none other than Dan Schaar from Schaar and Silva. He is the co-owner, and I'm really excited to have this gentleman on today because if you don't know him, you should. You're an interesting person.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're an interesting person. Your story, in terms of your journey to the law, is so cool and so adventurous. I was like, I didn't really know him that well before. I liked your comments, but I like you even more now. So, you're on my like list. Congratulations.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Even though I just destroyed your studio through the power of whatever I'm doing through your TV.
You know, whatever room you're in, I'm just gonna stand 15 feet away.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what you did, but it was like an earthquake ran through here. We got it all set up. Dan, thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Yeah.
Can you tell people where they can find you if they have any questions after today's episode?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if they want to follow me on Instagram, but pretty simple. It's just Dan C. Schaar. It's my first name, middle initial, last name. But I'm also a big fan of texting. I don't really track my social media as much as some other people do. So texting is always the best way. My number is 408-540-8343. You can text me at any time. Just make sure if you've never texted me before, tell me who you are. Because then I hate being that guy that sends that rude text of who is this? So I'll like put the number into Google. I'll be like, who is this person? So I spend like an hour trying to track people down before I send the rude text of, I don't know who you are.
Polite. You're so polite. I have no shame. I'm like, who are you and why are you contacting me?
Give me a little bit more free time with my life if I did that. So.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Dan, please tell everybody the story you told me going back into your college days and how you led up to the law. And not going to be a spoiler alert, but this is not the guy that was, came out of the womb saying, I can't wait to grow up and be a trial lawyer. Like, you had a super interesting path there. And I think it's why you're so damn cool.
I appreciate that. It is a different path because I definitely was, the law was not something I was born wanting to do. It's actually one of the things I didn't tell you yesterday during the story is my first introduction. Well, I should say my second introduction. My first introduction was unfortunately through some activities that I partaked in my high school days, which introduced me to the law first.
You got arrested.
I've seen the inside of some holding cells in my life, but the second part of it, which is actually kind of funny, is my dad is a retired airline pilot. My uncle is a criminal defense attorney back in Ohio, and I can still remember one conversation they had where my dad basically said my uncle defended the scum of the earth, and my uncle, you're just an overpaid taxi driver. So that was the discussions that I can remember early on. But no, my path to the law was it was very meandering. I finished undergrad and knew that I wanted to do something, either doctor, lawyer, whatever it might be, but I wasn't drawn to it. So of course I did what any inspiring lawyer or doctor did. I became a boat captain and a scuba diving instructor. And, moved to the Cayman Islands. Very typical. Very typical. Cayman Islands, spent, 11, 12 hours a day, driving boats, diving, and, loved it. But at the same time, it was like, all right, this is a great way to spend my 20s. But, as we kind of talked about yesterday, the Caymans draws a very unique group of people. And by unique, I mean rich. And these people are doctors and lawyers. And so throughout the many years that I spent with these people, seeing that they were able to live a life where they could financially bring their families down and dive with me multiple times a year, it's like, well, maybe this is the career path that I maybe want to look on. And it was like, all right, doctors have to go to school for 6 years, lawyers have to go to school for 3. That was a shorter path. And, I studied for the LSAT.
They were both in the Caymans.
From the Caymans,
Both in the Caymans, and now I have to add that to my goal list. I must be so successful that I can go dive with the man who follows Dan Schaar in the path of diver and boat captain. So
and I never really going down there. It was like I actually when I hit the island, I was like, well, maybe this is going to be my path for a while, and it eventually turned out that it wasn't. But talking to the doctors and lawyers, it's like, all right, if you really want to kind of do this, this, and this, and I still had that sort of idealism of I'm going to be able to change the world. I was very active with environmental conservation in the Caymans, and I saw that it's like I could probably do better in the law field than I can in the medical field. And by do better, I mean do better for others, not necessarily do better for my pocketbook. There was still that I wasn't all focused on the money, so to speak. And obviously my path getting into the profession and where I went, it's still thankfully not focused on the money. And the making the difference is what kind of brought me to the law after spending a number of years with, shorts, flip-flops, and even longer hair than I have now.
So yeah, you have a ponytail.
There it is. So it's
That's a ponytail that qualifies, and it's I think you're the only man in JHQ that sports one of those. You are so unique in so many ways. But I think it's interesting because what you were doing in the Caymans was your path at that time, and while it was fun, you probably always had something inside of you that was like, this is great for now, but this isn't going to fulfill me forever, right?
Yeah, and I think you kind of nailed it. It's you get down there and that's I mean I loved what I did. I mean and I was fortunate enough to be pretty good at it, and but yeah, you kind of look around and I'm working with guys that are still driving boats and still teaching scuba into their 50s and not quite in their 60s. It's not quite. Once you get to that age, if you're not running your own business, you probably need to get out of it. But I saw this and it's like, gosh, this is a career that's going to burn me out. And because it's awesome. Like I love doing it in my 20s, but driving boats and being in the sun for 12 hours a day and then spending another hour or two in the bilges of a boat doing diesel engine repair, it's hard living, and I didn't necessarily see myself owning a business in the Cayman Islands. There's a lot of political stuff that we could do a completely different podcast on that. But no, it was like, all right, this is not going to necessarily provide me the path to have the family, the children, and be able to sort of live life the way that I wanted to if I'm working 12 hours a day and exhausted. Like you come home and it's like you fall asleep because you got to get up the next day and crank out another 12 hours of hard work. So yeah, it's a short path.
I think that's interesting because I always say, like, I always kind of knew I wanted to be a lawyer. So I was different than you from that perspective, but my path wasn't streamlined. I ended up, I did the same thing you did, not, out in the sun in the Cayman Islands, but I ended up becoming an editor for a fashion magazine. And before the women have anything to say, do not judge me if you see me on the street during the week. I do not dress in haute couture, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, I did that, and I remember it was super fun, and I was booking the cover models and picking the clothes and, doing all that stuff, getting free products and all of this stuff. And it was so fun. And I remember thinking to myself, this is so fun. Why don't I feel fulfilled? Because at that time I had actually studied for the LSAT, and I decided halfway through that I wasn't smart enough, and I got up and walked out. And I was like, maybe I'm not smart enough for the law. And I ended up picking that up. And while I did really well at it, there's something inside of you that goes, this isn't enough. This isn't enough, and I'm not going to leave you alone until you go fulfill your purpose. And after that was when I went back and took the LSAT again, because I couldn't get it out of my soul. Like I just knew it wasn't the fulfilling journey. And I think that makes it more sweet when you do go to law school and you do get that, degree, and then you pass the bar and you get the license and you get that feeling like, yes, this is where I'm supposed to be. Did you get that feeling when you finally went to law school and took the bar?
I mean,
you about to say no. You were like, I'm about to blow your whole theory.
You know what, and I know it's just, it's one of these things that I don't know if it's yes or no. I mean, because again, it's when I got to law school, you know, and I don't want to say that I was old, but I was 5 years on average older than everybody else. And I was in the daytime program. I was 28
I
and
was 27. Yeah.
and a lot of I don't want to say the older, but the individuals that came into the law, not necessarily straight out of undergrad, they were in the part-time program, the nighttime program, whereas I was in the day program. And so, you know, there was that bit of self-doubt early on. And you know, sitting in these law school classrooms, and it's like, oh man, like, did I make the right choice? So for me, it was, I'm there now, but it didn't necessarily hit me straight out the chute, because, you know, I'd been 5+ years outside of organized education. And here I am, you know, going to law school with kids. I mean, I know they were 5 years younger than me, but and not to sound arrogant or pompous, but I came into it and it's like, yeah, I had spent, you know, I'd done thousands and thousands of dives, and as I kind of joked around about, had saved hundreds of people from some pretty dangerous situations. It's like when you dive in the Caymans, it's pretty deep water and people lose track of where they're at, and it's like there's no bottom here. So to me, it was just like, okay, I came into it with a life experience of, yeah, I get that you're able to answer that law school question, but this is not reality. Like reality is all these different things. And I've learned that now, because it's one of the things that I think I've learned, that your grades in law school don't matter. We know that now. It's like how well you did in law school, the grades you got, the first job you got, doesn't necessarily make you a great lawyer, doesn't necessarily make you a great human.
But what's funny is I look back now, and when I started, I was a year younger than you. I was 27, but I did feel older than everyone else. And now, you know, I'll be 40 this year, and I look back and I'm like, 27 was so young. And it's all relative, but I agree. I was not top 2% of my class. And I remember the school that I went to, I remember a lot of people telling me some of the scrappiest lawyers come out of this school, because it wasn't a tier 1 school. Made you hungry. So I agree with you. It doesn't translate. It does not translate. So, okay. So you're done with the boat captain thing. You took your knowledge of being able to repair engines into law school with you. Saved people from almost killing themselves underwater. And you're amongst a bunch of younger people who don't have the law or life experience that you did up until that point. So you're a little bit of a fish out of water in law school. Oh, you see what I did there? Cayman's water. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm subconsciously brilliant. And then I remember we were talking about this yesterday, and you were like, "Hey, I wasn't top of my class."
Nowhere near that. Like, not even close. Like, I mean, definitely bottom half after my first year. I don't know how close to the cutoff. I mean, I went to Santa Clara. Santa Clara is one of those schools that had a cutoff. Like 20% of my first year classmates failed.
They had attrition. They had attrition. They'd kick them out. Ooh, cutthroat. A little pressure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, so that I mean, obviously I made that cut, but I don't know by how much. And yeah, so it's sort of when you go to a school, and Santa Clara cranks out a lot of tech lawyers, you know, it's Silicon Valley. And so, you know, there's a lot of big firm potential, but only if you're in that top to 10 to 15%, which I wasn't. So yeah, I had to sort of shift my mindset of, all right, well, I'm not going to do that. What do I do? You know? And you know, I found a way, but there was a little bit more, there was that element of being hungry, you know? It's like, oh, I got into this relatively good school and I'm going to get this great job. But they don't tell you that, well, really those numbers only relate to the top 10 to 15%. Everybody else got to work their tails off to make even half that, to get the job, maybe you'll get lucky and get a paid internship.
And you didn't know at that point. You didn't know at that point what kind of law you wanted to practice.
No, and it was, in fact, like we were kind of talking about the other day, the first year, the Socratic method, all this bang, 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 it's like, God, can I even be a trial? I mean, it wasn't even like trial lawyer was well out. It was like, can I even litigate, or am I going to be one of these people that has to do transactional work where my fight is a paper fight, where I don't have where I've got 30 days to manufacture my arguments, to think about things, because the Socratic method scared me, and I was like, whoa, like it really is like the movies, kind of.
You didn't like getting called on?
Yeah, I didn't like getting called on, because especially for me, it was like this wasn't diesel engine mechanics. This wasn't any type of issues that I dealt with planning, dives and doing these things. Like it was a new thing for me, because again, I didn't do like a lot of pre-law stuff in undergrad. I mean, yeah, I was political science, but you don't spend a lot of time on how to get ready for law school. And I spent 5 years, and then I took the LSAT, and the LSAT doesn't do anything to prepare you for law school, and doesn't do anything to prepare you for being a lawyer. So I'm getting into these, and I'm reading these cases. It's like, all right, so this is really boring. What do I highlight? What do I point out? And then all my classmates who had lived the law since they were born were like, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer since I was a little kid. Which of course there are people like that. So I was behind them. So yeah, the first year, even the second year, it's like, God, please don't call on me, because A, I don't think I know what I'm talking about. And B, I don't want to be embarrassed. I mean, I still have that element of pride, and you want to do well. And especially when you're the old guy, you know.
So how did you narrow down the type of law you wanted to practice?
Luck. I got lucky in my second year to get a paid job working as a law clerk for a PI attorney, and learned a lot from him. He hired me on after I passed the bar. At that point, I thought this is what I wanted to do. I didn't know for sure, but he kind of exposed me to a few things. But it was a moderately toxic relationship. I left him and went to another attorney who I thought was going to be my dream job, a very, very accomplished injury attorney. That was even more toxic. And, which is great, because I can say that now, because I do get along with these guys now, years and years in my career. And unfortunately, my first boss recently passed away. I can get along with them now, but in the time it was kind of toxic. So I actually did kind of a crazy thing, and I flipped, and I went to the defense, and I worked as a house counsel for farmers for a number of years for an absolutely wonderful guy. My supervising attorney at Farmers was just a great guy. And actually, he's the one that really taught me how to be a trial lawyer. And he also made me realize that I need to be a plaintiff attorney. I need to represent people. I need to take care of people. That's really where my strength come in. So finding this area of law required me to actually try both sides first, and then realize that being a plaintiff attorney was what I needed to do.
Do you think that your experience on the defense made you a better plaintiff's attorney?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Well, number one, you get to see the other side, and you get to see the true evaluation of how the machine works, and that these are the steps that have to go through for them to analyze cases, and to figure out what is what is their number, so to speak. But I actually think there's an even more important lesson that sometimes gets lost in our advocacy, and that is, we can disagree with the people that are on the defense side, and we can get really angry, but they're still human beings. And yes, the blustery, angry letters, which I have absolutely sent in my life, sometimes work. But I've often found that the opposite sometimes works even more, and that you can be an advocate, you can lay out what needs to be laid out in these letters or these phone calls, but the respect, the mutual respect. One of the things that I felt when I was on the defense side, and it's proven true on the plaintiff side, it was a lot easier for me to recommend a higher number to pay on a case if I liked the plaintiff attorney, if he or she was respectful to me.
Okay.
And it's the same thing that I try to do now. Yes, have I dropped F-bombs with adjusters and defense lawyers? Yes, I have. And oftentimes when I do that, I know that my case is going to last a little bit longer because they're going to meet fire with fire. And so that's sort of been, has been my approach for the most part. And it's something that I did learn is yes, they need the information, but they also want to be treated like human beings. And that will go a long way. It won't always go all the way. You're still going to have to try cases against adjusters and attorneys that you're exceptionally nice to, and they're not. And they'll fight you tooth and nail. But you know, the law of averages, I try to be as nice and as thorough as I can be, and that usually works pretty well.
So my motto on that is I am really, really nice until you give me a reason not to be. Right? Like I try to teach this lesson to young lawyers because I think sometimes young lawyers come out of law school with this idea that they have to be combative in order to earn respect. And I try to explain it actually works the opposite way. So what I'll do is, you know, if I get an attorney who's being, you know, right off the bat, I'm very nice. You know, we both got a job to do. We can't be plaintiffs' attorneys if we don't have defense attorneys. They can't bill hours if they don't have us filing the cases. We actually need each other. And oftentimes, I'm just going to say it. I said what I said. A lot of defense attorneys are miserable. They're miserable. And we don't even have to state the reasons why. We've both been defense attorneys, we know. Some of them love it and believe in the cause, and they are, you know, tried and true defense attorneys, and some of them get stuck there for one reason or another and never leave it, and they don't like it, and that's their life, you know, 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day. Like that's gotta suck, you know? So my whole thing on that is you know, the Dordic Trial College is coming up, and I'm actually presenting on this topic. And I'm always like, if I get someone who is rude to me off the bat, I'll pick up the phone and I'll say, hey, I don't know what went wrong. I don't even care whose fault it is. Let's start over, okay? Because sometimes people are very brave behind a screen and they're bullies behind a screen. But you pick up the phone and now you have actual human-to-human contact, and they switch. If they don't flip after, you know, my soft olive branch, then you're gonna get a different version. But at that point, I'm still gonna be professional, but at that point, you kind of deserve it, you know? So I always, my whole thing is you get more bees with honey than you will ever get with vinegar. Don't let people walk over you, but there's no, you know, and for you, you know, given that you were in-house counsel, you probably already know if an adjuster or if defense counsel is being truly unreasonable. Because you were them, right? So I totally get that. And I'm glad you said that because I feel like, you know, not enough attorneys heed that advice.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And I think that the other thing to sort of remember is, and I do this a lot with my trial practice, it's stuff that I work on with Trial by Human, is you've got to sort of reverse roles with whoever's on the other side. And I do this with jurors, I do this with judges, and I do it with adjusters. There is a reason they are speaking to you in that manner. That reason might be you. But there's a very good chance that reason might be something else. And I think your point is really well taken, is, you know, pick up the phone, start over, because maybe it was you, or maybe it was, you know, some, I mean, I had to.
Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe they lost a family member. Maybe they're in an unhappy relationship. You never know what's going on in someone else's life. But give me the example, but I also want you to talk about your tie to Trial by Human.
Yeah. So the example I was going to use is actually something that happened to me last week. I was able to resolve a case up in Oregon, and I'm not licensed in Oregon yet, so I was pro hoc into this case through Trial by Human, and we had local counsel. And Oregon is very unique. It's very Wild West, very limited discovery, and there's no expert discovery. And so I had been operating under the assumption that this great expert report that I had, I didn't need to share with the defense, but I shared it with the mediator. So the mediator was beating up on the defense, and the defense was like, well, wait a second. And well, it turns out that this expert report fell under a medical exception, and we should have produced it. So needless to say, it looked like we had sandbagged. And the defense attorney, rightfully so, was pretty upset. The case
Right.
did settle. It settled at mediation. And the next morning I picked up the phone call and I just straight up told the guy, I said, I got to apologize, because if I was in your shoes, I would be pissed at me right now. And the guy really appreciated the phone call. He
I'm
said, I
sure.
get it.
What a
And,
classy thing to do. Yeah, that's a very classy thing to do.
it didn't need to be done. He already paid us a bunch of money. We settled the case. But the reality of it is that I plan to try more cases in Oregon. He is based in Portland, and he works for a defense mill. I'm going to see him again in Oregon. And now, hopefully, all the goodwill that he and I built together throughout the case, of me being sort of the straight shooter, hopefully it's still there, and that this one little screw up doesn't screw everything. But I had to do that. I could have walked away and been like, you know what, screw you. Like, whatever. If you're going to be a jerk about this and all upset, but I realized I was in the wrong. He had the right to be upset. It was all me, but now I apologize. And it is hard, because sometimes we're like, no, I think I was right. I think I had the right to do this, that, or the other. But anyway, that was an example of, hey, sometimes it's them, sometimes it's us.
But you know what? That's also an example of you being a human being and having integrity. Even if you were never going to try a case again in Oregon, I think what you just did was display the fact that you are not only an attorney, you're human. And we make mistakes. It's like I teach my kids this very basic lesson. I don't care if you screw up, you're going to screw up. Be accountable. That's what I care about. Do you have the self confidence and the ethics to say, you know what, mom, I messed up, I'm sorry. I care so much more about that than whatever it is you did, that you thought was going to upset me. You just displayed that lesson. That lesson isn't lost just because we're adults and we're lawyers. So bravo. Now you are tied to Trial by Human. And I actually did not know this about you, so I want you to talk about that. But what I also learned about you this morning is that you are a Peloton beast, according to Julie. Anyway, let's go. Trial by Human. You work with the Rowleys, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, my path to working with Nick and Courtney and the team at Trial by Human, again, was somewhat meandering, not quite as meandering as my Cayman path or anything like that. But I actually started off working with Dan Ambrose over at Trojan Horse for a couple of years, and learned a lot of stuff through that. And then, but I'd known Nick for years, and I knew Jacob Norman for years. And when I sort of broke away from Trojan Horse for a number of reasons, Jacob and I sat down and we started talking, and Nick had just kind of started the Trial by Human group. And I just sort of fell into it, and we started talking, and he said, well, I think I'd like you to help out. And so I did. And so you've got, Nick and Courtney and Jacob, and then, Brian Ward and Henry Pecor and Aaron Broussard and a lot of other just phenomenal, not just phenomenal lawyers, but just phenomenal humans.
Okay.
And it's great. And I think it goes, I think it goes without saying that, there's a lot of different groups out there. You've got Keenan, you've got, Trojan Horse, which is now, I think, Trial Lawyer University. I'm a Trial Lawyer college grad. And there's a lot of different groups out there that are teaching a lot of good things. I think that, I think Trial by Human is the best. And, that being said, if you've got some other interest in other places, you should definitely check them out, because I think there's a lot of phenomenal trial lawyers out there that are teaching a lot of good things, and we can learn from a lot.
And you work cases with CZNR, right?
I do some work with CZR as well. Again, it's the relationship, and also for Trial Lawyers for Justice, which is our Iowa-based firm. So I do work with those firms as well, along with, running the Schaar and Silva. That's basically, that is the firm. Myself and my partner Eva Silva and our paralegal Jillian Sullivan, like, we're sort of the core group, and so we work cases on our own, but we also work cases through Trial Lawyers for Justice and CZR.
Okay. So let's talk about that. So you leave Farmers. How long were you there?
I was at Farmers for 3 years? No, it was actually about 2.5 years.
Okay.
So yeah.
So 2.5 years in, and then you don't go back to work for another firm. You start your own.
No, I actually did start. I partnered up with another group of lawyers after Farmers. That's actually where that's where Eva and I met. We were junior partners. What wound up happening is that the firm that Eva was at, who I actually had worked against her firm at Farmers, so I knew her as her being on the plaintiff side and myself being on the defense side. That firm joined with another attorney, and they formed a new firm, and then brought me in as a junior partner there. And so kind of running my own show, but not really, because I'm still under the umbrella of some other attorneys. Spent a few years there. Again, it was great getting into the plaintiff's practice, but once again, I wasn't trying cases the way that I wanted to try cases. I was trying a few cases every once in a while, but it was not a firm that was set up to try cases. It was a firm that was set up to settle cases. And so as time went on, it became very clear. And, I was fortunate enough to have some successful results and start building a name for myself as now a plaintiff attorney, that Eva and I were then able to then form our own firm. And it's been now almost 4 years that we've been running our own show.
Did you two partner up because you had the same goal, meaning you both wanted to be trial lawyers?
Yes-ish. Eva is a phenomenal, I don't want to use the word support, because she's not, like, she plays a very vital role. Being a trial lawyer is not just, in my opinion, is not just standing up and arguing the case to the judge or the jury. Obviously that's a huge part of it.
Yes.
But the team itself, I am terrible at discovery. I'm terrible at the paperwork stuff. And Eva is phenomenal at that. She's also very good at sort of understanding people a lot better than I do. So yes, she wanted to be a trial lawyer, but she wanted to be more we'll make sure that we get the case framed up really well through motions in limine. I'll help you with jury selection. So she is there to sort of be my eyes and ears.
Okay, so you guys play off of each other's strengths for the benefit of the firm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you've got your firm set up. Were you scared when you guys started, or did you feel confident because you had a partner doing it with you? Like, what was going through your mind at that time?
Both. I think that there's a difference. To use one of the old. There's an old quote that a guy said. It's fear is healthy, panic is deadly. And I think the for us, yes, there was an element of fear, but there never was an element of panic, because we knew that we would figure it out. We knew that we would be successful. We'd proven that we had been successful when we were with other people. Now it was just a matter of doing it on our own. And that's where I think the fear element came into play. Was not fear of doing it. It was fear of, hey, if something bad happens, it's on us. We can't necessarily fall back. And so yeah, I mean, there was that element. And, the first few months was a bit difficult. And, then we got, roughly 4 to 5 months, because I had my daughter at that point was She had just turned 3 months old. Eva had two daughters. And so there was a little bit of concern there, but then, we got a great verdict a few months after we opened the shop that I think really sort of set the tone for things. And, is there still an element of fear? Of course. I mean, every single day I go in and there's an element of fear, but it's manageable fear. There is no panic there. It's just making sure. And COVID, I think, has had an effect on that. But, yeah,
How old is your firm?
so we'll be 4 years, July 1st.
And the verdict you got, the defense paid the verdict?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were able to get it paid. It was a pretty significant verdict against Pacific Bell Telephone Company. It was actually here in Santa Cruz County. And yeah, we had to do some post verdict deal making. They paid a little bit less, but I represented a brain injured man who also had a very young child. I think his daughter was just a month younger than Carly. So when the verdict came in, his daughter was 6 months old, brain injury, and so
So you were able to settle it so they would waive the appeal.
Exactly. And we didn't take, there wasn't too much trimmed off. They still paid pretty close to 100%, but there was some issues.
Worth it. That's worth it when otherwise they're going to tie it up, for years. But and I remember we discussed yesterday how your firm, grew slowly and organically. How long do you think it took for you to feel like things were, you had the systems in place, you weren't necessarily fearful? I mean, we're always a little bit fearful, but I mean, like, how long did it take for you to feel like established?
I mean, there's still certain days where I don't, where, it's actually really funny because I'll have conversations with my wife and I'll be like, well, I still have to do this, and this to sort of prove myself. And she's just kind of like, no, you don't. And I think it's more just how I am. But setting aside that issue, my own personal issue, it was probably a well over 2 years. And I think part of the reason why is, the first year in, we hit a couple of really good verdicts and settlements. And then at the end of our second year, we got smacked and lost a case against U-Haul that I think at that point we had dropped probably $250,000 in costs into, and we lost. And so that was a bit of a gut check. And so it was probably a few months after that I felt like, okay, we've now survived and suffered a significant loss. And we're okay. We're still here. So I think at that point was probably when it clicked with me of like, all right, we're good. And so that was 2.5 years into it. And more for me, I know there's the old adage, you learn more from your losses than.
What did you take from that? Like, did you take any, business advice away from that?
From a business standpoint, I mean, the money had to be spent. It was a brain injury case. Everything was being fought. And so the money had to be spent. From a financial point of view, would we have done anything different? No. From a trial prep point of view, it actually made me better because I realized, hey, you need to make sure that when you're doing this, and this, like, maybe you winged it a little bit too much because you had a year or two or multiple successes that you felt were successes. Was that true or not? Probably not. That's probably just my own stories in my head. But I can tell you the very next trial, which we did a few months later, wasn't a huge case, but we got a phenomenal result in light of the evidence and the injuries. And I know that case, number one, I don't think we would have done as well on it if we hadn't lost. And in fact, we probably would have pushed a settlement on that other case because we'd have been like, oh man, we just finished this big case.
But why? Like, what was it you took from that loss that made you do so much better the second time around? And do you see value in taking a loss like that and then turning around and getting right back on the horse again and going back to trial?
So to answer your second question first, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The worst thing I think you can do as an attorney is let
Give
the
up.
loss own you. Right, exactly.
Okay.
And that's where the fear versus panic comes in. Because to me, I see a person who loses a trial and not getting back onto that's not fear anymore. That's panic. I mean,
Yeah.
you've gone into a next phrase because you're no longer
Yeah.
afraid of going in. You're panicking because you don't know how to win the next case.
Or you think you don't, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And so you're not
The-
approaching it.
So the first one, what did you do differently for the second one? Did you like over prepare for it? Were you able to see it from a different perspective? What was like, if you attributed some of the success for the second one to the loss on the first one, what did you take from the first one that made you do so well in the second one?
It was, I don't want to say over preparing. It was adequate preparation. I think with the
Okay.
trial that we lost, I relied maybe a little bit too much on my own personal skill, in that I can skill my way out of this lack of evidence, talk my way into a good verdict. It was a tough case, and and it was, and
Do
so
you
I
think you
think,
were overly optimistic about maybe the liability?
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Thinking you could out lawyer
The liability issues. See, and the reason why I'm narrowing my question, and I don't mean to keep cutting you off, is because I think this is so important. This is so important because as lawyers, we have to make those judgment calls, right? Like someone said to me recently, I mean, you know what a good case and a bad case is. And I'm like, do I? Because sometimes we get a case and the damages are phenomenal, but the liability, sometimes we get that feeling in our gut like, I don't know about this. But we hear those glory stories, right? Where people post on social media and they're like, this case was hard fought and we didn't have this and I got a $50 million verdict. And you're like, how the hell did you? And you're not getting the whole story, right? And I think there's such value to that because I think people truly get misguided. Like sometimes I've learned the hard way. I didn't lose $250,000 in on a case because I don't have those cases yet. Not like that, not going to trial. But sometimes we do get that gut check where we're like, I don't know if this is gonna, and I think sometimes we think our lawyering is going to outsmart the common sense of a jury. And I think what you're saying is, I thought I could outsmart the common sense of the jury. But the facts are the facts. You could be the greatest lawyer in the world, but if you have crappy liability facts, you can't make that stuff up. You've got more trial experience than I do, so tell me if I'm wrong, but is that what you're saying? Because that's what I wondered that. I wondered that myself as a trial lawyer.
yeah, I think the way that you express it is you nailed it. And yeah, it's why I always have to kind of remind not only clients but other lawyers. It's like the damages questions come after the liability questions on a verdict form. And I had another saying is, don't fall in love with bad cases. And it's very easy for us as lawyers to fall in love with our clients' cases, as we should when we represent human beings, but you still don't want to fall in love with a bad case. And I do think that case was not a bad case. It was a tough case, and we had a tough jury. And again, that went a little bit back to my experience in Santa Cruz, because I have the greatest victory of my career in Santa Cruz and the greatest defeat of my career in Santa Cruz in front of the same judge in the same courtroom, courtroom 5, courtroom 5, Santa Clara, Judge Burdick, Bob Simon and Ben Swanson know Judge Burdick very well.
So when you see him now, you're like, I don't know how this is gonna go.
Well, it's funny because so I've tried 3 cases in his courtroom, and 2 of them have been record-setting verdicts, and one of them was the massive defeat. And it's funny because the last case that we tried that we got a good verdict on, in the pretrial settlement conference, the judge brought that up, and he looked at the defense and he says, yeah, I've seen Mr. Schaar do great things in my courtroom. And then he looks at me and he says, and Mr. Schaar has seen jurors do terrible things to him.
Oh, that was classy of him. I like it.
It was, but these are the things, this is the experience that you have to take. And so to kind of go what you had just said is, it doesn't make a difference how good of a lawyer you are. And we've got some phenomenal lawyers at JHQ, and I know a lot of phenomenal lawyers, but none of them are magicians. None of them can change the facts.
Yes. Yeah, because sometimes I get cases that are brought to me and they're like, oh, Ashley, we got 2 surgeries, we got, future surgeries. And I'm like, we haven't talked about the liability yet. Well, it's contested, but I think it's crap. And I'm like, and they get so mesmerized by the damages. I'm like, hey, we don't even get there until we get past liability. You can't discount the value of liability, right? I mean, I hope, Dan, you try some cases in Southern California. I'd love to try a case with you. I think that would be such a great experience.
I would too, for sure. I definitely, this is the one thing that's so phenomenal about this group is that, I'm up here, but, I'd love to get down south. And I've got a couple really good attorneys that I work with down in San Diego, that I work on cases with. And yeah, it's just, because to me, it's something that we haven't really talked about a whole lot here, but, sort of the JHQ model of collaboration and teamwork. I hate trying cases by myself. I just hate it.
Oh, I've decided I'm not going to do it anymore. I walked into one, and oddly enough, the judge recused himself a week before trial. But I have some coming up, and I'm like, you know what? Just the trial prep, being, a parent, and on top of that, a single parent, I was dying. I was like, this isn't even fun now. Right? Like, it was so much pressure. I couldn't even enjoy the process. I agree with you. And I think when you try cases and you collaborate, you get the benefit of a completely different perspective. Like, you ever talk to your jury after the trial and you're like, what were you guys, stuck on? And they will bring up a point where you're like, damn, I didn't even think of that. Like, I didn't even think that was important. You always want the benefit of a different perspective on your evidence, on your damages. Some, I used to try my cases with Lourdes. We had a system. She was great at voir dire. I was great at opening. She was great with the doctors. I was great with, the damages witnesses, the plaintiff, the family members, all that. We knew where our strengths were. And fortunately, whatever was my weakness was her strength. So I think there's great value in not only trying cases with other people, but litigating files with other people. Stop being so worried about the fees. Like, don't worry, you're going to make more money when you team up with someone who finds value in an area of your case that you didn't, or you didn't believe in it. I think it's fantastic.
It is, and it does. It just makes things more enjoyable because it's
fun at that point.
Yeah, and yeah, you're hanging out with your friends, and yeah, I mean, for me, I know there's certain lawyers out there that I could never try cases with, just because I know that personality wise, just okay, I'm fine. You're a phenomenal lawyer, but I just don't like you. I just don't like you. And guess what? You're probably not going to like me because
I don't want to be in the pit with you.
Yeah, like I know for a fact that there are lawyers out there that can't stand me, and that's okay. It's all right. I mean, I can't sit here and, yeah, does it still hurt my feelings? Of course, I'm still a human being. I want everybody to like me, but the reality of it is that's not going to happen. And really what's kind of, yeah, just, trust me, there's some lawyers out there that don't like me. Maybe there's some people at JHQ that don't like me.
I think it's interesting that it even, I taught my kids this lesson because, like my daughter's, she's 12, and I'll tell you, preteen girls, they're mean. Like, these girls are savage. And I always tell my daughter, I'm like, what? Someone else's opinion of you is none of your business.
Yeah.
And I've had someone say something to me recently that was a little unkind about my looks. And I looked them dead in the face and I was like, your opinion of me is none of my business. You have a great day, But it takes age, wisdom, self-growth to get to that point. So if I were you, Dan, I would not think two thoughts about what someone else thinks of you as long as you are comfortable with you.
Oh yeah. And I say that sort of in jest, but I think it's sort of proves the point of, yes, collaborate, but it's okay not to collaborate. And I do find probably the most difficult thing for me to do now as a lawyer is actually rejecting cases from people that I do like.
Yeah.
And,
Yes. Yes.
I've got some great relationships with some of the JHQ people. And, it's like when they send me a case, of course, it always goes to the top of the list because it's like, okay, this is from somebody that I know and respect, but sometimes I still have to say no. And it sucks because it's like, I really do want to work with you. But number one, it wouldn't be fair to you and your client because I don't have the time. And number two, I'm not going to add anything to your particular case. So, but here's what I'll do. I'll do this, this, and this. But yeah, I'm trying my best. I think having my daughter, she's 4, she's about to start school. A lot of these lessons that I'm trying to teach her, it's really good for me because it is a reminder. It's like, not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. And guess what? Not every juror is going to like you. And unfortunately, I've had jurors vote against me because they don't like me. They don't like my hair. They don't like my suit. They don't like my beard. I try to get those people off the jury, but
Yeah.
please everybody all the time.
That's a good water topic. Anybody have any issues with beards?
Anyone?
I always I do it. I actually learned it from a personal experience, and some of the things that Gary Dordick does is, it's one of the last questions that I ask people because I've had jurors come up to me after trial and voted against me, and they're just like, well, it was what you said here, it was what you said, I just couldn't believe what you were saying because you reminded me of somebody. It's like, seriously?
I know, but that's out of your, like, how do you know? You know what I mean? You do the best you can. Fantastic. You gave your phone number. Dan, thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure getting to know you. I hope we end up, I've got some cases that might be worth your trial time if they go to trial. I mean, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I've been settling them. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to know you.
Anything, anybody, you or anybody else ever needs, do you have any questions about any NorCal stuff at all? And if you want to just join up on cases or anything like that, just let me know. I would love it.
Fantastic.
Oh, wait, there's a Q&A box that just came up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
From Alexis. If it's not too late for a question, what's your favorite trial movement? Oh, there's a few of them, but my favorite one, I'm actually glad you asked that question because Alexis, or Ashley, you and I didn't talk about that yesterday. So the big verdict we got in Santa Cruz 4 months into into our existence was this hotly contested bicycle crash here in Santa Cruz County. And in a nutshell, it involved 2 cyclists, and there was a depressed manhole in the middle of a bike lane on Freedom Boulevard, which is a pretty popular cycling route here in Santa Cruz County, but it's a fast road. It's a 50-mile-an-hour road. And so the cyclists are pretty well skilled. Well, my guy's coming down the hill, and this manhole is at the base of the hill, and it's right in the middle of the bike lane. So, and it's like a 2.5-inch depression. So he has to go around it. And of course, as he goes around it, that's when he gets clipped, and that's what causes the crash. Well, my client's fiance is the only witness. She's riding behind. And of course, the CHP officer comes out and shockingly blames my guy for the crash. And basically says, oh, well, this is what the witness said. The witness said that he had to go around the manhole, but it was way past the manhole when the impact happened. So the defense latches onto this statement that my client's fiance made to sort of be the whole case. So why is this my favorite? Well, so the cop was deposed. I didn't depose him. It was one of my former partners. He did a terrible job with the cop. He and the cop almost actually went at it during the depot. So we get the cop's going to come down, and I've got my client on the stand, and the defense is like, well, the officer is coming down. He has to testify today because of lunch. And I'm like, whatever. I'm like, this isn't going to happen because I got my client on the stand. But I said to Eva, I said, if he shows up and he's not in uniform, I'm going to let him get on the stand. And I don't know why I thought of that. I said, I don't want this cop in a uniform because it comes across as more authority. He's got more authority, and he's wearing a suit. And I said, screw it. We're going to let him on the stand. But I did something that I've never done before. He comes through and he's outside the courtroom and he's called as a defense witness. And I walked up to him. I introduced myself. I said, hey, I represent the bicyclists. I know you're on vacation. And I had this good rapport with him right off the bat. And of course, the defense attorney was all huffy about that. So we get the cop on the witness stand. I get up, and I don't think he scored too many points because his opinion on the crash couldn't come into evidence. It was just basically his investigation.
Right.
And so they're latching onto the witness statement. And so I get him on the stand and I start talking to him. I said, well, officer, why don't you tell us how you go through your witness statements? Because our whole theory with the case was that the statement was improper because she actually did a supplement where she corrected all the mistakes in her original statement. And of course, the defense was saying, well, she changed the supplement because she talked to a lawyer. That was their whole theory. And so I said, well, walk through the statement. And he explains all these things. And then he says, and at the end, I take my report back and I change the statement so that it makes sense. And I said, well, officer, help me out with this. What do you mean by it? And this is all brand new stuff. I said, what do you mean by that? None of this stuff had come out in his depo. This is at trial, like full on live, like, okay, tell me what you mean by that.
That's a gift. That's a wrapped gift.
Oh, it gets better. I said, so tell me this again. He says, I take the statement, and then when I'm putting it into my report, I want to make sure, because I know it's going to go to an insurance company, I want to make sure that it makes sense. And so sometimes I'll change statements. I'll say, so what you do is you take a statement from a witness, then you put it into your own words and put it in the report, but you don't ever clear that with the witness to make sure that's accurate, do you? No, I don't. And so it would make sense that if you possibly rephrase things and said something different, that your witness might actually give a supplemental report to correct your mistakes. Oh yeah. And that's what happened here. He said, yeah, that's what looks like happened here. Done. No further questions. So basically what this guy did is he took the whole defense case, which was trying to put my client's fiance, destroyed it. The defense, I look at the defense lawyer and you could see him and he was pissed. And he said, no further questions. And then what made this so great is that we finished the cop depo. He gets off the witness stand and we go on lunch break. So I go outside and I'm talking to this guy like he's my buddy, and all the jurors walk by and they see me chummy with the cop. So they're convinced that the cop has been on my side the whole time. And of course, jurors love cops. It was this huge aha moment of we won the case. And after the trial, all the jurors said that was one of the defining moments.
Dan, thank you. I know we're a little bit past time, guys. Thanks for being patient. I'm going to wrap up this episode. People know where to find you. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us this week on Level Up with Laiken. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. Sending you lots of love, joy, and success this week. All right. Talk to you later, everybody. See you next week.